Good morning.
Good morning.
Jim, we were just talking about how the day's already flying by, right? Like we just sat down to talk about the book and it's already almost 9:30.
I know it's 9:30 and we're busy. We're included. We feel important today. It's a productive day
Jim,
so far.
we feel important every day.
You are so right. I just pointed it out today specifically, so that's all.
That's right. That's right. Jim, how's your week been? What have you been doing to feel less overbooked?
Well, let me just say here that I guess I was kind of less overbooked yesterday. I'd taken a day off.
Oh, that's right.
Due to the weather. Another commitment that I had for yesterday was postponed until next week due to the weather. So because of that, I was like, okay, I think I'm actually able to take a day off. So I'd taken the day off, took care of my dogs, of course, and I found myself, well, of course, I did some cleaning and kind of get ahead a little bit. And I decided the last 2 days, I made 2 home cooked meals Monday evening.
Whoa.
And yesterday I put together and did a roast in the slow cooker with potatoes and carrots and, the sauce and stuff like that. And I did basically a roast for dinner last night. So
that's impressive.
Yes. So otherwise, I'm just kind of enjoyed the day. So
wonderful.
How about you?
Well, it's really interesting. We didn't really talk about this beforehand, actually. I spent Sunday doing nothing, which was fantastic. And I sat beside my husband and watched football and I snuggled with all my animals. I have a zoo at my house. So we just keep adopting pets, just our families love it. But that was really nice. But also last night I know teachers have it way worse. But we are running here at the IU a lot of asynchronous courses and communities that I run. And I had a laundry list of, not laundry list, but like tons of people to respond to, right? You get those notifications and they get backlogged. So I had about 75 posts to respond to last night. So I sat down and I responded to everyone, and it was refreshing to realize the community that's behind the educators and our region here. It's just nice to hear all the positivity still going on out there, and it was good to just catch up with the community. So that was rejuvenating for me. Lots of positive words out there.
That's what always keeps me rejuvenated and keeps me moving, and love the positivity and just the kindness and respect for others, and what we can do to just do that, always that kind action for others.
Absolutely.
So
yeah, and we dove in, we started reading Reignite the Flames. Community, we have a confession. Chapter 1 was so good that it's just, there's so much to talk about already. And so we made the executive decision that we were just going to stick with chapter 1, because otherwise this video recording would be like an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 1 hour for each chapter. So we are going to take it a step back and go a little bit slower. And today we're just going to focus on chapter 1, right? So we think it's important, right? Quality versus quantity. So let's just talk about chapter 1. For me, Jim, even like before getting into the chapter, the quote from Mandy, and I know I repeated it last time, but when we separate ourselves from the things we love, we are also cutting out the passion and purpose in which we live our lives. That in itself is reason enough to focus on re-engagement. And so that first part, it really brought me back to just this whole book study. We started with Find Your Why. We started talking about passion, our core values, and doing the things that we actually love. And then we went to the energy bus and surrounding ourselves by the things that we love, the people we love. And so I think it's interesting how this all segues, right? So when we're talking about engagement, if we don't include those things that we love and the people we love, our disengagement it's going to be there, right? So I think it's important to keep in mind what we love and ask ourselves that every day. And then make sure we're finding that time every day for what we love. So, all right, Jim, what were some of your takeaways with this awareness portion
Oh
of
my
it,
gosh.
disengagement?
Well, you know what? Sometimes I just like, even
It's
just
all
look
marked up.
at each one when she made the comparison of walking down the halls.
Uh,
I mean, and it just gets me thinking of what goes on behind the closed doors. You know, like, are teachers like very excited every single day, or are there days that where there's some obstacles, you know what I mean, in their way for that day? So we start looking at like what goes on. Let's say I said there's your professional role every day for the support that you give to your students and the teaching and all the support every single day. And at the same time, they are so drained because of what goes on in their personal lives as well. So it's kind of like bringing that awareness that sometimes it's like the passion is there. You want to always inspire, always to do your very best for your students and teach them all the different tools and strategies. However, there's other ways that there's other obstacles, like I said, sometimes that kind of they can't give their 100%, let's say.
right.
So, and it's like we say, we reignite the flames. They're kind of like losing their fire a little bit. So, and it's not, and a lot of times it's not on purpose. It's not on purpose. It's just something that happens. And I think each and every one of us see this either within our own personal lives or our professional lives as well. And so it starts that piece about the disengagement. So, so that was just the very first part that I wanted to say. Anything you want to jump in with, Becky?
Yeah, I think she brings up a good point too, that and you just said it, like it can be anything. Like we're not just talking about an education. Like there's times in my personal life I feel disengaged from maybe my family, like things at work are crazy and I feel disengaged from my family, which I know sounds awful because it's the things I love, but this is just life. And it's she mentions, I don't even know what page, about like it's almost like a seesaw. It's never completely balanced, right? And I think it's also interesting because we talk about, like you said, you know, she says a calculus teacher who has had to be spoken to multiple times, the way they treat students, the instructional coach who spends professional learning time, blah, blah. We can think of these things. And I've been very fortunate. I've worked in small districts. So I know people, like I knew the people I worked with. But when we think about even the organization we work in now, RIU has 400 employees at least, you know, and the importance of making sure everyone is heard, everyone is known. And that can be really hard, especially if you're working in a huge organization. I know we try our best here, but there's other divisions that in our organization here that it's hard to get to know everyone, but that does go towards engagement. And you could have the complete wrong impression of a person because you just don't know them, right? You don't know the baggage they're bringing in or their story. I shouldn't say baggage bringing in, baggage they're carrying. So yeah, so for me, going on to that, like I know she has a whole big definition of educator disengagement, which we'll get to, but I thought, again, tying back to Simon Sinek on page 5, she said it's the complete disconnection to the why behind teaching. So that disengagement is just, you're disconnected from your why. And for me, what do you do when you're disconnected from your why? You follow the rules of the energy bus, right? Like it, again, full circle. So
all this is coming right back into the previous 2 books that we restudied.
Yeah. And again, I can't preach this enough. And I'm so glad that she mentioned it. This whole disengagement thing, as you're listening to Jim and I talk about this, like this is nothing intentional. Being disengaged happens in different seasons of your life and it's unintentional. And she goes to mention it's nothing, it's at a fault of no one, sorry. It's the possible result of working in a profession that is emotionally taxing and hard. Our profession is taxing and it's hard. So, what did you think there, Jim?
I totally agree with you. I mean, it's just, there's just so many factors that can be involved. And like I said, if we're losing that attachment, that engagement, sometimes it's kind of like that balance. It's kind of outweighing. Do you know what I mean? The negative is kind of taking over, and it's like, what kind of tools that can we learn? And that's why we're doing this book study as well, to help you to gain these tools and strategies to think about your intentions, think about your engagement, think about what is important, and to bring out the real you, and like what positive and strengthening qualities can you bring to the table for your students or your staff. Let's say, especially if you're an administrator. She has clearly said in this beginning of the book that this book is not just for teachers. It is for administration, it's for paraprofessionals, it is pretty much for everyone. So she talked about how, like how you said, Becky, disengagement is not a conscious choice. And this was on page 6. Nobody needs to feel like it's their fault. However, and this is on page 7, re-engagement is possible. And just because something isn't your fault, it doesn't mean that getting better isn't your responsibility. So,
Jim,
like
that's
that
a good
part,
one.
that one that hit me like right, like if you would kick me in the side, that hit like that I would notice that one. So I'm trying to think of an analogy, and sometimes it's just not coming out right. So please
I
bear with
can't believe I missed that. I can't believe I missed that. I
Yes.
got to get my highlighter out.
So that would then be to where you're going to start to define your engagement. And so it's like taking responsibility. So like at times when we are not at our best, you know, like I said, we have some of that support, you know what I mean? But it's owning up to, you know what, there's some things, maybe some struggles, maybe some disengagement. Like we said, it's not our fault, things happen, but you know what, taking ownership and helping to grow and move in that direction. You know what I mean? It's like a lifelong lesson. You know what I mean? So like a lot of times, like I said, in areas where I felt like it was my faults and I definitely have my faults, and I've definitely have had my weaknesses, let's say. However, to me, that's what also is those life lessons and tools that I can help bring across to others, because in some ways I can kind of know what they're going through. You know what I mean? And it's just that listening ear and support. So, but then she went into, on page 7, defining engagement. So, you know, employee engagement, not as happiness or satisfaction, although they may felt engagement, but as the emotional commitment the employee has to the organization and its goals. So like,
and I think it's interesting that she goes beyond the engagement. Like that's the definition for engagement, and as engagement as itself. But when she defines it then as the educator engagement and educator disengagement. So let's take one step back here and go to page 6, where before we jump into engagement, talk about the disengagement. And I want to mention too, like I have a presentation I've been presenting a little bit lately about, well, actually a lot lately, about student engagement. And when you look in this virtual world, it's like, how do you get your students engaged? Or I'm struggling with this. And I keep saying this has been a struggle forever. Like engagement has always been a struggle. But is it something, and this is just a question I'm throwing out, is it more about our students' engagement, or do we first need to look internally and see about our own engagement as an educator? You know, when I think back to my students' engagement, a lot of times it was reflected on myself, how engaged I was in the work I was giving. And so anyways, that was just a thought to ponder. But educator disengagement is the, thank you, is the unintentional detaching of oneself from the emotional connection to the why behind education and teaching due to negative factors and or circumstances that feel out of one's control. This results in an otherwise uncharacteristically negative view of their efficacy, which goes to John Hattie's work about self-efficacy, #1 indicator of student effect size, jobs, and potentially their personal selves. And I think that's interesting because there's nothing in there about test scores. There's nothing in there about, you know, the job itself. It's just about that emotional connection. and the detachment. Whereas, Jim, do you want to read on page 9 the educator engagement, what it means when you're
Yes.
engaged?
Yes. So now when we start getting into the educator engagement, this is where are we intentionally seeking purpose and understanding our impact, living within that purpose, creating opportunities for both ourselves and for others in order to be happier, healthier, and more positively, emotionally engaged people in order to best serve those around us.
Jim, when I read that, I literally, like, here, you can see my annotation there. I was like, Mandy, I am 33, 34, something like that. I don't even know what my purpose is right now. Like, what's my impact? Like, I'm still seeking that. That's what this whole book study's about. And so then I was so like thankful when I kept reading. And she said, while educator disengagement can happen unintentionally, staying engaged in education is a purposeful act. It involves empowering ourselves to understand how our emotions drive our decisions, finding and living within our purpose, developing our core beliefs that align with our purpose, and being self-aware. Again, I keep thinking, Mandy, I don't even know my purpose right now. My purpose is ever evolving. Figuring it out takes a great deal of intention, and part of re-engaging is understanding that personal empowerment. And so then it goes with the importance of self-empowerment and personal development, not just professional development, personal development. And it's just, I think it's so hard because everyone thinks they know their purpose right away and they need to know it. And it's that journey of always re-engaging yourself in your life. And I think about the student teachers I work with, the 22-year-olds that graduate, and think about that definition right there, the educator engagement. You just can't explain it, right? Like,
No, it's I feel like sometimes it's not something that's going to happen right away. You're kind of like getting to know yourself along the way, along the journey. So it's kind of like, what are your pros? Like, what are your strengths? What are some areas that maybe you would feel as weaknesses, but to others would be strengths? Do you know what I mean?
right?
Like that part of engagement and getting to know yourself more throughout the process, because you know what, I mean, like we think about when we first started, let's say our teaching careers. So we think about what we were doing then, we thought we would be, like for the rest of our lives, but you know what, things change, circumstances, other opportunities along the way. I never thought I would, like I said, and get married and move and start, like start a new chapter. And I, like I said, that was 3.5 years ago. So like now I'm looking back and it's like kind of thinking about like how I am. And I feel like in this year, in 2021, I'm finding that at 42, well, tomorrow will be 43.
Woo! Birthday
Yes.
boy.
Yes. I'm finding that recently I'm finding more of my personal purpose in so many ways.
Right.
I think it's been there, but I think I'm acknowledging and owning up to it more recently.
Right.
And it's kind of like by doing that, I think that will help drive more of my purpose and my engagement, as well as my enthusiasm and importance of my professional work that I do for others.
Right.
And, for our students, the teachers, just for all professionals and educators. So.
And purpose changes, right? Your purpose changes. And
Yes.
that's why you have to be willing to move it. It's just like on page 10, when she says engagement is more like an average, how you feel. So again, that continuum, like it's never like I'm super engaged and then I'm not engaged. I mean, that's not really authentic,
Yes.
right? Engagement is more like an average, how you feel over the course of the good times and the bad. It's understanding that some periods will be difficult, but overall, you still are living within your purpose and understand your impact. And that drives you through the hard moments. The idea, and I think that she hits home with this, is that when you are disengaged, oftentimes we say we're disengaged, but we're angry or we're sad or that's still an emotion. And she mentions that it's still, you're still engaged, for her, this disengagement that we're going to talk about before we get into re-engagement, but this disengagement is when there's complete apathy, right? Like no feelings.
No
And I think
feelings at all.
for our book study, we have Becky's burning question, Jim's burning question, and then your burning question or comment. So Jim, I know you mentioned to me this continuum of educator engagement that goes into that
Yes.
disengagement of apathy. So are you thinking that might be your burning question, burning comment?
I think so. Like I said, I want to look at this again a little bit, but I just feel like when we feel about those times when we're like, what is the difference between those times, or like as far as the opportunities when you're fully disengaged, the opportunities when you're engaged with some negative emotional engagement. So you kind of feel yourself kind of teeter-tottering back and forth a little bit, and then when you're fully engaged. So like my burning question would be like, what, looking at each of these three areas, think about an example of when was a time, like when do you feel fully engaged, you know what I mean? And like when did you feel like you were kind of like that in between, like during those times? And when have you ever felt at a time, at any time in your personal or professional roles, as far as when you feel disengaged?
Right.
So,
Absolutely. And
you know,
mine came when she started talking about culture and climate. You know, when you're in a workplace, let's just say workplace,
mhm,
not just the education setting, but a workplace, and you're talking about your culture and climate. And she mentions it's like a chicken and egg situation. What comes first? Are people disengaged as a result of the culture and climate, or is the culture and climate poor because people are disengaged? What comes first? And I think that's an interesting concept to think about. Um, so yeah, so we'll leave everyone with those burning questions and thoughts that we
yes,
have. We'd love to hear from you, your burning thoughts,
yes.
questions. You can reach out to us on Twitter or hashtag Are You Overbooked, and we'd love to hear
Mhm,
more. But any final
yes.
comments, Jim, before we wish them farewell for the week?
No, I mean, not at this time. I'm just very excited to be part of this opportunity and journey along with you, Becky, again. And I think just getting through the book, and as well as the opportunity that even just by, can I say that we've just been that little bit of communication with Mandy as well throughout this
Yes.
study as well. So getting to know her, I think a little bit personally as well, and her reason why behind this book is helping me to feel that more of that connection as well. So I'm very
Yes.
excited.
We will be excited to have Mandy join us on March 2nd, I believe, our last
Yes.
book chat that we'll be putting out for her book.
Yes.
So we are very excited. But awesome. Well, everyone have a great week. Happy reading, happy reigniting your flame, and we will see you next week.
All right. Take care, everyone. Have a great day. Thanks again.